saw me chuckle as I was doing the introduction there. She said I chair the most powerful committee, one of the more powerful committees in the Senate. I always chuckle. It's powerful when you have money. It's not that powerful, trust me. Nevertheless, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me back. This is my second appearance here, which tells me a couple things. One, I didn't bomb totally the first time. They invited me back, so that's always nice. I will say, though, this is the second time, and both times John Bear wasn't here, so I think he scared me. Just put that out for the record. John Bear is ready to come here when I'm here, because he knows I can't do the question and answer section. If you see me, I brought this thing up here, this folder. This is to give my staff false sense of security, and I'm going to stick to the script. We talk about these things, and we just sort of go on. Dave Taylor and I were both former staffers together one time. We always know that when the bosses get up and start talking, the speech is normally okay. It's a Q&A that always scared the heck out of us. We knew what was coming there. But anyway, it is great to be here, and it's pretty timely, I suppose, since just 2 weeks ago the Senate moved forward and passed the budget to get the budgetary process moving. We did it for a couple of reasons. One, it's good to get it moving, and with the House rules such as they are these days, I would say that's Josh Shapiro's legacy to state government. I think by us passing the budget, getting on their calendar this week, they can address it sometime before Labor Day. I'm not sure, but they will get it. We will get it moving, and we did get it moving. We got a budget out, which the budget. I'll say the same thing I said when I was here 4 years ago, the first year after the 2008 significant economic downfall, when the Governor Rendell had proposed a budget that spent about $2 billion more than what we had proposed. And I'll give you the same thing. This budget reflects the revenues that we have, which is important in the state government. We want to stick to the philosophy of the governor that we were not going to raise any new taxes, and we do not in our budget proposal. We didn't create any new programs in our budget proposal, and I believe in all of the restorations that we put into this budget just bring us up to the level of spending of last year in those particular areas. So this is a budget that has a little bit less than 2% increase of spend from last year. It spends about $27.6 billion. And it does, obviously, we're working off the Independent Fiscal Office numbers, which is obviously a new office was created this year. They came out with their report in May. The governor had a tougher job. When the governor introduced his budget back in February, it was a different economic reality. He had projected about a little over $700 million shortfall of revenues for this fiscal year. Revenue, fortunately, is coming a little better than had been anticipated, and the Independent Fiscal Office had that shortfall around $300 million. So that allowed us to address some of the concerns within the budget that the governor had to make back in February under different circumstances, but still keep the spending less than 2% and leave us at the end of next fiscal year the revenues coming in as projected around a $300 million surplus, which is important when you start facing the out years, what your challenges are going to be, and you want to make sure that you leave revenue there for a small increase next year as well. And so I think our budget that was passed on a bipartisan basis, I might add, we had 39 votes. We had 2 senators in our caucus on personal leave, so we really would have had 41, which was a nice change from some of the previous years where we worked together and were able to address a lot of needs, a lot of issues. Some of the areas that we addressed, areas of agriculture that our caucus particularly have great concerns about. We represent a lot of rural Pennsylvania. We're able to make some restorations there. We were able to put $120-some million into human services, which obviously was a great attention during this budgetary process. Basic ed, we were able to put another $100+ million into basic education as well. But probably the thing that got the most focus and what I like to spend most of my time talking about is our budget reflected a restoration of the higher education budget to the last year's budget numbers. And it was an additional $255 million from what the governor proposed. But again, it still is a flat funded from last year, which represented a 20% cut from the year before. So even though it was a lot of money in this year as far as just adding, it still was not necessarily a huge windfall in these universities. Now, why do we do that? Which begs the question. Well, there's been a lot of discussion about higher ed, and I thought I would spend my time mostly because Steve's here beside me. He wrote the speech, by the way. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about hiring. I said to the board presidents of the universities, Penn State, Pitt, Temple, and Lincoln, a year ago at the Senate Appropriation hearing, that Governor Corman did them a favor when he introduced such a significant reduction. I believe it was a 50% cut last year. And I said, for no other reason, that he brought it to the front of the table of discussion. He brought it to the front page of the paper. My time here in state government, higher education has been mostly an afterthought. There was money there, we put some money there. If not, we didn't put any money there. And you can see it in the budget. I know there's been a lot of discussion that these universities have received X amount of money over the last 10 years, and so tuition is going up. What are they doing with the money? That's certainly a fair discussion to have. But if you look back, the state-related universities, which again are Penn State, Pitt, Temple, and Lincoln, they received in the 2002 budget $685 million. In the 2011 budget, they received $688 million. So essentially been flat funded for a decade. Look at the state system. State system in 2002 had $471 million in their budget. In 2011, they had $503 million. So even before a lot of the economic downturn all time to our state budget, they were being flat funded. Universities like businesses, like state government, we have increases in energy and healthcare and so forth, and so they've had to make do with that. They've had to do their part to help us balance our budget by receiving flat funding. Obviously, the last couple of years, because there's a large pool of probably discretionary dollars, the governors have to look for them for more savings to balance our budget, which is certainly understandable. If you would build in the inflation, just not an education inflation, but just regular inflationary dollars from 2002, with a $685 million for the state related, and $471 for the state system, which roughly, if I do my math, a little over $1.1 billion. The rate of inflation would take you to about $1.5 billion. Just not education rate of inflation, but just regular inflation. So you can see how, for that decade period of time, they would just sort of go along with us. And then, obviously, the last couple of years have seen significant cuts. So the question begs, a lot of discussion has been about, these are big universities. Obviously, you're talking about Penn State, you're talking about University of Pittsburgh, you're talking about Temple University, you're talking about huge institutions. And a lot of discussion I've heard them, they can do without more money from the state. And my answer is they can. That's absolutely right. They can absorb this. What money we give them from the state is a small part of their state budget. They certainly could absorb that and move on. And some have even talked about taking all the money from them and going to, let the money follow the student approach instead of funding these universities. And again, these are large enough institutions that for sure would be difficult. Sure, you can see some changes. I mean, you're already seeing, in the case the University of Harrisburg announced, I believe, a couple weeks ago, that their Titusville campus and their Bradford campus are now merging administratively. So there would be changes, obviously, but they would be fine. I mean, they would absorb it if they had to. The question I think we should ask as taxpayers, not just members of the General Assembly who represent taxpayers, but all taxpayers, is not what they could do without state money. The question is, what do we get for our state money? I always look at every appropriation as an investment. And so that investment should get a return, whether it's a financial return, whether it's a social return, some sort of return that makes that investment worthwhile to the taxpayers. So what do we get? What do we get out of this relationship with the state-related universities and the state system, Pennsylvania university system? Well, first thing we get is in-state tuition. What do I mean by that? Well, Penn State's out-of-state, normal tuition, out-of-state tuition is about $27,000 a year. I believe Pitt's around 24, Temple's around 23. The state system, I believe, is 15. That's the tuition that they set for students who come in from out of state, which is still significantly lower than most private universities, which are comparable size in stature. Now, because we have a relationship with them, we give state taxpayer dollars to these universities. They give in-state tuition for students from Pennsylvania to attend their university. In Penn State, in Pitt's case, it's $15,000 a year. Temple, I believe, is $13,000, and for state system, it's $6,000. So there's a significant discount that we as citizens of Pennsylvania who are going to these universities are getting to attend these universities because we have a relationship with them with the state. Because our investment, if you add up all of the, if you add up all of the money we put into higher ed, it's around $1 billion. If you add up the discount that we get for all the students from Pennsylvania who attend these universities, it's about $1.8 billion. So that's a pretty good return. And if you just look at it on a per student basis, of a 4-year degree, you know, Penn State, you're going to save about $50,000 by being in state. You're talking about $50,000 less to attend Penn State as in-state as opposed to out-of-state. Pitt is about 40,000, Temple's about 40,000, and the state system is about 40,000. That's real savings. I mean, that's real discount, that's real money. Even in state government, where we're talking billions, that's still real money for the average family. Now, you take a county like Bucks County. Bucks County doesn't have one campus of a state system or a state-rated university or branch campus in their county, right? Not one. So why would they care about higher education? Well, Bucks County has over 12,000 students that attend one of these schools somewhere. And they annualize average over $100 million a year in savings from in-state tuition as opposed to out-of-state. Yeah, that's real money not going into these university pockets, that's going to the economy somewhere. As a parent, I know we just don't have it and say it. If you don't spend it here, you spend it somewhere else, right? You're spending it somewhere. So that's $100 million a year in just one county alone. It doesn't have a school in their county that's saving through in-state tuition. So I think that's a real benefit to the Commonwealth from our investment. What else do we get from our benefit? Well, we get a benefit that the presence of these universities throughout the Commonwealth, I believe just under around 40, maybe a little bit less than 38, I believe, counties have one form of campus in their county throughout the state, whether it's a branch campus, whether it's a state system school, or a campus of the state related. And so you see a significant presence throughout. And those are economic drivers in those communities. Columbia County, Bloomsburg, #1 employer in Columbia County. IUP, #1 employer in Indiana County. Clarion, #1 employer in Clarion County. Probably guess. Penn State, #1 employer in Center County. And you can go on, the significant employment that they have in these communities. Now, you can make the argument that, particularly Penn State is such a large size of a branch campus, or maybe the state system, that we shouldn't have so many of these schools, that is too much. You know, it need to be condensed somewhat, and we can have that discussion. The only thing I would caution you is think back to when Penn State wanted to combine their law school campuses on the main campus. How did the people in Carlisle feel about that? All right, when Dickinson was going to be removed from that campus, how was that pushed back? How would the pushback be in Mansfield if they lost their university, or Clarion, or Lock Haven? You know, it's a significant importance to those communities. So, you know, do we have to have necessarily all of these? Maybe not. Maybe we can talk about reducing some of them. But it's not just a reduction of schools that we're helping to pay for somewhat, but it's also a reduction of employment in those areas. So that presence in those areas, that economic driver that they have in those areas is extremely important. But the final piece, and I think the most important piece, is the issue of access. Now, you all look at me and say, well, okay, Jay Corman lives 10 miles from the University Park campus, so no wonder he's such a supporter of higher education. And I would say you're 100% wrong. Look, University Park is not going to change. Whether we fund Penn State or don't fund Penn State, whether we decide to go to a more private model, and whatever we do, main campus, University Park is going to be the same, as it will be in Pittsburgh, as it will be in Philadelphia. There's still going to be 45,000 students coming into State College every year. Still going to do all the research and all the things they do that are economic drivers up in main campus. And so, from an economic point of view, my district's not going to change. So, no matter what we do. But what will change is access. Now, I take that very personally, because in the mid-'80s, I was a college dropout. I was at home, working in my family's business, not doing a lot of stuff, constructive, quite frankly, and didn't know where I was going in my life, but I was, a college dropout with limited opportunities. I decided to go back, and I got an associate's degree at Penn College, as Laura mentioned. But then I was faced with, I wanted to go back and get my bachelor's. I wanted to be a journalist, journalism major. I got a lot of critique of you guys' work, too. From my high schooling. Having said that, you know, I was fortunate enough that I lived 10 miles away, you know, from main campus Penn State, where I could work full time, take out loans, pay my tuition, live at home, and get my degree. I'll never forget, so naive. Actually, at the time, I lived in Williamsport, and I thought, well, I'm going to go back and have my bachelor's. My home is right here, let me check it out. And I went in, it was a great visit, and everything was wonderful, and then I got to pushing, and I was like, whoa, I'm kidding. That's not a consideration. But I, was, you know, I had access because, you know, I lived 10 miles away from the main campus. Not everyone lives 10 miles away from main campus, of any of the major universities or state systems. All right, and so, you know, these branch campuses, these state system schools are access. You know, we held hearings, Senate Appropriations Committee did hearings all around the state after last year's budget. We held it at State College, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. We held them at Lincoln University, and we did one in Millersville University. And the number one issue that kept coming back and back and back was access. This is access for people with medium abilities economically to get into school. You look at, because of their public mission, what they can do. You know, Carnegie Mellon, which sits right beside the University of Pittsburgh, downtown Oakland, quits in the mid-40s. If you think I'm knocking on Carnegie Mellon, I'm not. It's a great school. In fact, the president of Carnegie Mellon came to our Pittsburgh hearing to testify on behalf of the University of Pittsburgh on its importance. But you look at Carnegie, I mean, Carnegie Mellon's got branch campuses all over the world. They got them in Qatar, they got them in Asia, they got them everywhere. You know where University of Pittsburgh's campuses are? Radford, Titusville, Greensburg, Johnstown. Access points in Pennsylvania for people who live close by to be able to get a college degree in a major university. Look what Temple University is doing. Temple 2020 plan for the future, where they made an agreement with the school districts around North Philadelphia, where Temple's located. And essentially what they're saying is if you do the work at high school level, and you make the grade, no matter what your economic status is, we'll get you into school. We'll get you into Temple, we'll get you a 4-year degree. Now, I'm guessing the University of Pennsylvania doesn't have the same program. That doesn't anything wrong. The University of Pennsylvania is a great school. So because they're a public school, they have a public mission, they have a community mission, they do that kind of thing. Again, access to a major university, state system as well. So some of these branch campuses, we don't have community colleges all over the state. And so the Clarions of the world, the Mansfields of the world, the Slippery Waters of the world, the Blockades of the world are those entry points for those students to get into school. Access. So when you look about what we get for our investment of about $1 billion between tuition discount, economic development, and access, I think we get a pretty good return. So as we move forward during these very difficult times, and they are difficult times, the question has to be, do we want to continue to have that kind of access for our students to go to school here in this country, this Commonwealth, at first-rate institutions like we have in Pennsylvania? I think we do. I think it would be a short-sighted mistake on our part to walk away from that relationship. And again, Penn State will still be the main campus, Pitt will still be there, Temple will still be there. Not all the state system schools might not be there. All the branch campuses might not be there. We're cutting people's ability to get into a first-rate degree, and who knows, maybe they'll take that journalism degree and become a state senator someday. With that, I have to take any questions.
Unsurprisingly, we have quite a few. I'll start taking them off here. Start with one in response to some of the points you just made, saying we have the highest in-state tuition in any public university in the nation. What is the General Assembly doing to ensure working-class Pennsylvania kids can attend college?
Well, one of the things that we did this year is, obviously the $255 million is not laying around Harrisburg these days. And so to put that kind of money back in the budget, we call around, I call around to the university presidents and said, hey, this is going to be a partnership. If we restore your funding to last year's level, and if you come out with 10, 15% tuition increases, we're all going to get fried for that, and rightfully so. So we got a commitment from each of those universities to make sure that this year's tuition, as they set it, hopefully it'll be flat funded, but at most it will be at the rate of inflation level. So that's a huge commitment on their part, and one that we're needed to get to obviously get the budget to where we were. So that's a significant part. But, you know, as I said, the other is just we have to continue to make a commitment financially. It's a partnership, and you know, we continue to, Ed Rendell always said it, but he never really backed it up. Was the universities shouldn't be a drain on the state budget. They should be a way for us to use these universities to help generate economic development in Pennsylvania, and we need to do more of that.
How confident are you that the higher ed restoration will be part of the final budget? Or the administration, the House leadership on board with some of these points that you just made?
Well, I would never speak for either one of those two. I don't know. I think I'm very confident that there will be a topic discussion, and I'm confident it's something that's very important to the Senate. The reason I just stated, it wasn't just to throw money away. I mean, we think it's a good investment on our part, and so negotiations are what they are. I'm very hesitant to ever draw lines in the sand and say this has to be here, this has to be there. I don't think that's the proper way to do it. But I haven't gotten much negative feedback from the other two, so we'll see how it goes. I'm confident they'll be there.
Given the recent audit of California University, do you, as appropriations chair, think that California University and the state system have been good stewards of taxpayers' funds? And will this audit and California University situation affect the budget?
Look, that I'm anxious to see more of that. That's a troubling story and one that we need to continue to monitor. As always, look, anytime you use public dollars, whether it's for state related, which is partial, public, or the state system, which is 100% public, you have to make sure that our dollars are being used wisely, that they're accountable. Every dollar, the basic level, whether it's traditional schools, whether it's charter schools, they're still public dollars, and we need to have accountability of that. So I think the state system, by and large, I think runs very well. Let's understand, over those 10 years at the state system, not only being flat funded on one hand, they were also not raising tuition much either, and so they were really being squeezed from both ends. So I think they've done a very good job for the most part. But gotta get to the bottom of what happened, and then make the right changes and move forward.
Should that have an impact on the state system's budget?
We'll see in the end. I don't know that it has to. Again, there's 14 universities. This was something that's troubling throughout the whole system, and then maybe you need to look at a whole structural change of the system as far as some of its administration. But if it's contained to one of the universities in California, you look at that one alone and find out what happened, and then make decisions from there.
Do you think school districts should have to spend down their reserves before raising taxes or cutting?
I think it'd be wise to. Again, look, I'm not a school board member, so I don't tell school board members how to run their budget, although they certainly like to tell state how to run ours. We got elected officials who won't be elected if they keep raising taxes. And so, obviously, if you're planning building projects, you need to keep money in reserve for that, prepare for that. But look, we as state government did just that. When things got tough, we obviously spent down our rainy day fund. We made all the changes we possibly could make to keep our fiscal house in order and not raise taxes. So I would advise the school districts to do the same as a constituent of one school district, but they have to make their own decisions. And look, every school district's different. Maybe some school districts like spending more money and saving it for whatever, and that's their choice to do. That's school district at the lowest level. If I was a taxpayer in the district, I would like it, and I would voice my opposition to that. But that's the beauty of having the school districts at the local level. They get to choose which way to go. And as I've seen in my district, and I'm sure around the state, when they're not represented taxpayers, the beauty of the school board, you can change the face of the school board in one election. You can change the majority of one vote. So they better be responsible to their taxpayers or we'll be there.
Why didn't the Senate prioritize restoring general assistance for disabled adults?
That's a discussion point that's probably going to happen as we move forward. It was, anything in the Department of Welfare that doesn't have a mandate from the federal government, subject to scrutiny as general assistance. A lot of states don't have that type of program. And quite frankly, there wasn't a whole lot of feedback from the governor's proposal until today, or at least maybe 4 weeks ago, on the problem with zeroing out general assistance. Now, I've had some people come forward lately, and there's a lot of, someone said to me, well, maybe you don't have a strong lobby for general assistance. Well, trust me, some of those providers in the areas of mental health, they have very strong lobbies, and and they get out there and they talk about these issues. So, I think that drumbeat's starting, and they can make a case, and maybe there'll be a change there. But at this point, I think we put a lot of pressure on the Department of Welfare to balance its budget and to take reductions in its budget. And so, when the governor comes forward thinking that this is one area that they can do without, it's sort of hard, on one hand to tell them you got to reduce your numbers, on the other hand, tell them you can't reduce this. So, but we'll see as the process moves forward.
You suggested that the Senate budget was responsible because it keeps the increase in line with a taxpayer bill of rights type index. Is there any thoughts on actually passing that type of limit?
I'm for it. It certainly hasn't been an issue the last 4 or 5 years, just because we haven't even had the ability to get to the taxpayer bill of rights level because the revenue's been so low. But Senator Fulmer has introduced that, and I'm for it.
If the budget is done early, will you and your fellow lawmakers stick around for some other big ticket items?
It all depends if both bodies and the governor want to do it. Certainly we can. A couple big ticket items, particularly most needed transportation, I think we should do. But you need all 3 legs of that stool to want to do it. So we'll see. But there's no reason why we shouldn't.
Should that be done this summer, this fall, and what about doing that during signing back?
Well, I think we could do it this summer. We could do it in the fall. As soon as we get 26-102 and the governor all on the same page, we should do it then. Having said that, I don't think we should do it in signing back. Although I will have to laugh, and I'm interested to see some of the national media. In Washington, D.C., they're talking about doing everything in signing back. I mean, they're openly. Conrad, Senator Conrad from North Dakota, who's a fair guy, budget chairman. I mean, he's openly talking about we can't do the budget until after the election. And that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And they're letting him get away with it. They want to do everything in sine die. And so, I think legislators and the executive branch should be held accountable for their votes and their actions, which is fine. To say you can't do it before an election, I don't know how you can go stand for the election at that point in time. Transportation or any other issue is an issue that needs to be discussed, needs to be put out there. I've talked about them with their work on different issues, and I think you can make a very good case why we need to do it. Let's make the case and do it. We don't need to wait until after an election to get it done.
A couple questions on another big issue, pension reform. What role is pension reform playing during the current budget discussions? And this is a quote from the question, what parts of your secret pension reform plan can you reveal?
It's so secret, I don't know about it. Mark, you guys doing something I don't know about? Look, Senator Brown and Senator Brubaker are sort of our caucus leaders on that issue. Senator Brown authored the most recent pension reform bill that went about as far as we could with the current governor, the past governor at the time. It's something that absolutely positively has to be done. I said the other day after our budget, there's no tax increase that is palatable, there's no spending cut that is palatable to make room for the contributions of where this pension obligation will go for the state. The school districts will all begin to go in the red in 4 to 5, even good school districts that are financially in good situation, they'll all begin to go in the red in a few years under this current situation we're in. I think it's something that needs to get done. I expect it to be a next year's budget issue. I expect it to be, because that's when we're going to start making room for it. And unless you do some sort of reform, and that's really what it's a budget issue. I mean, you can talk about it as pensions, but it's a budget issue. I mean, I think the current year we're in, and I think I'm right on this, we contributed around $600 million to the 2 pension systems that the state is employed with. The SERS, State Employment Parent System, and the PSERS, the Pennsylvania State Education Parent System. So we contributed as an employer, we're half the employer of the SERS school district, the other half. About $600 million in this fiscal year. We budgeted about $1.1 billion next year, and that's just going to continue to escalate. So if you want to keep your budget flat or below the taxpayer Bill of Rights, you got to get rid of other stuff. I mean, as the employer, that's your obligation. Unless your earnings just come in dramatically, which they did for a while, and they're still doing well, but we're so far behind. I mean, we lost $30 billion of value of the two funds in 2008. Just let that number sit in for a second. $30 billion of value for our funds. So, the employee's contribution stays the same no matter what. That's the deal. The employer, the taxpayers, we benefited from good markets. In the 90s, the early 2000s, we were contributing less than 1%. And that's real savings for us as taxpayers. We were doing great. Unfortunately, I don't know my history all that well, but I think it's the first time we've had 2 recessions in a decade. And obviously the second one being one of the largest since the Great Depression. So we've had tremendous losses. $30 billion is a tremendous loss. And so therefore the employer now has to pick up the difference. And that's just not something that school districts can afford to do, or the state, and still maintain a reasonable budget. So I don't have a secret plan. I wish I did, but it's something that I suggest that it will be. It's not going to be for this budget, I don't believe, but it's something that we'll put in place for next budget so that we can begin to alleviate some of that contribution and make structural changes. I'm all in for alleviating it only if we make the structural changes so that we can look forward and be comfortable that we can match those earnings. I'm not in for just kicking it down the road. The beauty of the state system as opposed to the federal system, and you'll see it in play with this pension, is the constitutional provision to balance the budget. We have to balance the budget. It's the law. And so therefore we have to make tough decisions. I think back, Dave was a staffer as I was in 1995 when the United States Senate was 1 vote away from a balanced budget amendment. The House had passed it. The Senate was 1 vote away. The senator from Oregon, Hatfield, appropriations chairman, didn't want to vote for it. It was his first year as majority appropriations chairman. He didn't want those kind of ties to him. So he voted no. We're 1 vote short. Think what the federal government might be today if they had to balance the budget. Think of that. They had to deal with Social Security. They had to deal with Medicare. They had to deal with Medicaid. You need to have emergency provisions for war and things of that nature, but you have to tackle the tough decisions. In the states, we're not the only state with a pension problem. Most states have pension problems. But because we have to balance the budget, we're going to have to solve this issue. As I said, we're not going to raise taxes by 3 points in the BIP reform. We're not going to cut everything. Heck with higher ed. We go way past higher ed. We go into basic ed. We can cut everything to make room for this. So the beauty of our system is we have to deal with it, and there's no getting away from it. And I applaud the governor. He's out there talking about it already. He knows it's a big issue, and he's going to deal with it. And I think at the end of the day, we'll get something done, hopefully, before next year's budget.
We have to get back to session here, so just one more.
Okay.
When will the budget be done?
June 13th.
June 13th?
Always good to have goals, like June 13th. Thank you so much.
We'd like to thank Senator Corman, who wandered away from the podium before he could grab his mementos that are sneakily hidden inside. They're compliments of Transit News and PCN.